Hey, what's up everyone? John here from testprepinsight.com, and today I'm going to review the SpanishPod101 course. I'll break down what the lessons are like, pricing compared to other apps, what I like, what I don't like, and of course whether I think SpanishPod101 is effective for learning Spanish. And by the way, if you want some more information about this language program at any point during this video, you can always check out our full detailed written review of this over on our website. An easy way to get there is just to Google Test Prep Insight SpanishPod101 review. It's the quickest way to find it. Alright, so to kick things off, before we get into the meat of this, let's quickly cover pricing and how SpanishPod101 compares to the rest of the language learning industry. So, in short, they have 3 different subscription levels: Basic, Premium, and Premium Plus. These plans range from $4 per month on the low end for the Basic plan, up to $47 per month on the high end for the Premium Plus plan. The Basic plan includes access to all the audio and video lessons. The Premium plan gives you the same lessons plus additional features like flashcards, word banks, vocab lists, and audio dialogues. And then the Premium Plus plan includes one-on-one access to a Spanish teacher and hand-graded assessments. Those are the high-level differences between these 3 plans. It's sort of your standard good, better, best offering. Now, whether this is a good deal kind of depends on which plan you go with. If all you want is the Basic plan, I'd say SpanishPod101 is a great value. At $4 per month, it's cheaper than Babbel, Pimsleur, Rosetta Stone, and just about every other language app. But the Premium course, their mid-tier package, is more directly in line with those names that I just rattled off, and the Premium Plus plan is way more pricey. So it kind of just depends. However, one thing I'll say here is that SpanishPod101 does seem to regularly offer sales and special promotions, and you can usually lock in a lower rate, so do make sure to check for coupon codes. I'll actually do my best to keep the description below updated with the most current coupon codes floating around out there that I can find, so give that text below the video screen a good look before buying. In my experience, you can almost always find a code to save yourself 20 to 25% off full retail. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about how the SpanishPod101 program works. From a high-level structural point of view, SpanishPod101 revolves around what they call pathways. It's a nice name, but these are in essence just courses or a collection of lessons. So, when you first sign up and land on the dashboard, SpanishPod101 will assign you a recommended pathway based on your learning level. For example, if you're an absolute beginner, you'll probably start with their Level 1 Spanish pathway, which is built around 80 or so individual lessons. These lessons are all lined up in a nice, orderly little path, which is easy to follow. And every couple lessons, there'll be a multiple choice assessment to track your progress and performance. If, however, you don't want to follow the company's recommended pathway, you can always pick your own. There are literally hundreds of different pathways or courses to choose from based on your learning level, lesson format, and topical category. In this way, you can basically pick and choose exactly what you want to learn. That's kind of the unique thing about SpanishPod101. From a high level, it has a very free-flowing structure where you're in the driver's seat because you can pick which pathway you want to learn, but once you're on a pathway, it's pretty rigid and linear since you just have to follow that path. That's something I really haven't seen with other apps. But anyway, that's sort of how it works organizationally. So now let's talk about what the lessons themselves are actually like within these pathways. And really, when you boil it down, there are 2 different lesson formats: audio and video. You can choose a pathway with all audio lessons or all video lessons. However, what I'll say here is that although there are 2 formats, it's clear that the audio lessons are really the company's bread and butter. There's way more pathways with audio lessons, and they're generally speaking better produced. In terms of what those look like, they're sort of like podcasts, hence the SpanishPod company name. And while the audio plays below the audio controls, you can review the dialogue from the underlying conversation, the target vocab, the lesson notes, grammar explanations, and a full word-for-word transcript of the lesson. That way, if you miss anything the hosts say, you can quickly find it on screen. And they all generally follow the same pattern. 2 hosts will introduce themselves and the topic of the lesson. Then they'll have a short dialogue in Spanish, followed by a slowed down version of the conversation, then a breakdown of that same dialogue in both Spanish and English in a very slow, easy to understand manner. Then following this, the host will introduce and discuss any relevant grammatical or culture insights related to the topic at hand. And lastly, they'll finish up with a quick recap and review of the vocab in the lesson. And they last anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes depending on the topic and learning level, but I'd say the majority fall in the 6 to 10 minute range. And following the lesson, you can take a short quiz which includes a few true-false and fill-in-the-blank questions. Then, for the other type of lesson format, video, the lessons are a little less in depth, and I would say the videos are generally shorter on average, usually just 3 to 5 minutes, and there's no lesson notes or grammar points. You usually just get a vocab list and transcript with the video lessons. Like I said, the focus with SpanishPod101 is really the audio lessons. And by the way, I know I covered that pretty quickly and it was a bit oversimplified, so if you do want to see some examples of the pathways or lessons that I just talked about, make sure to check out that full detailed written review that I mentioned earlier. I'll have it linked down below in the description for you. I have screenshots and examples over there so you can get a better feel for what to expect. Alright, so now that we've covered pricing, program structure, and lesson format, let's get into what I like about SpanishPod 101. And the first thing I like has to be the quantity and variation of lesson content. Not only does SpanishPod 101 have hundreds of pathways across all different learning levels, but they also give you the option of how you want to consume the content with either audio or video lessons. This is just so different from other language learning apps. There's a lot of other programs like Busuu and Duolingo where you follow a standard lesson flow and work the same drill types over and over. In contrast with SpanishPod, there's just so much diversity in their lessons and resources. Just for example, if you're learning Spanish because you plan on taking a trip or moving to Costa Rica, in that case, you can take a course that's all about Costa Rican Spanish. And even within that course, there's a bunch of variety. The examples go on and you probably get it. The main takeaway here is that SpanishPod 101 offers learners a ton of different options based on your learning level, preferred learning format, and personal interest and goals. It's just really cool. Okay, so next up, number 2, are the company's audio lessons or podcasts or whatever you want to call them. They are just flat out awesome, and I think they're the real highlight of this program. Not only is the content within the lessons spot on, but the rotating team of hosts are super engaging and fun. In other words, these aren't your typical boring educational audio lessons made by professors or something. They're really more like a podcast that you'd listen to for entertainment purposes. The hosts tell stories, crack jokes, mostly corny dad jokes, but they're still fun, and even weave in pop culture into the lessons. They just keep things light and fun, and it didn't even feel like I was there to learn something. So bottom line, if you're an auditory learner or you're just looking for a less academic type program to keep yourself motivated during the learning process, I think SpanishPod 101 is a great option. I was really impressed with their audio lessons. Alright, so number 3, I really like how SpanishPod 101 integrates grammar into their lessons. Just a really effective framework. So, during the audio lessons, there's a dedicated part of every lesson where the host will stop to explain grammar rules and principles from the underlying dialogue. And what's nice is that it feels very natural. It's not like the hosts are trying to force it down your throat. They break things down in a very understandable and digestible way, and they don't clobber you with too much info. And then if you do want more detail, you can always jump down to the lesson notes section for a more thorough explanation. There's just a lot of great info in those notes. So overall, I have to give it to SpanishPod 101. Not only do I appreciate the level of grammar content that they include in their lessons, but I also really like the manner in which they deliver it. Okay, so last up here at number 4 is that when you sign up for the Premium or Premium Plus plans, SpanishPod 101 gives you some really nice bonus learning tools, including things like spaced repetition flashcards, core vocab list, word banks, key phrases, and assessments. And of course, with the Plus subscription, hand-graded assignments and one-on-one guidance from an actual Spanish teacher. But even if you don't spend up for the Plus membership and just get the standard Premium subscription, I still think these bonus features can be super valuable. These tools really make the program feel more well-rounded and offer a chance to drill on some of the stuff you learn in the lessons. Plus, even if you're more of an on-the-go type person and don't have time for a full audio lesson, it's just really easy to quickly run through some flashcards or review core vocabulary. They make for nice little bite-sized exercises. Honestly, these different tools just really help to round out the program beyond the audio and video lessons. Alright, so now let's switch sides and talk about the things I don't necessarily like about SpanishPod 101. But before I get to that, I should just mention that every single month here at Test Prep Insight, we actually give away a free language learning course to one lucky person. It's super simple to enter. Everyone out there is eligible. I'll put all the details down below in the description on how to get entered, but just know that it takes like 10 seconds and hey, you never know. You could win a totally free subscription to SpanishPod 101. Okay, so back to the negatives. And number 1 is that when you first log into the program, it can be a bit overwhelming. There's just a lot going on and it kind of has this disjointed feel. Like I mentioned earlier, before you get into a pathway, you're sort of in the driver's seat and left to figure it out for yourself. From the dashboard, there's the pathway the company recommends, other featured lessons to check out, a news feed, featured vocab lists, study statistics, and your own profile. Plus, up at the very top, there's even links to other tools. It's just a very busy setup and portal, and it can become difficult to get your arms around the pathway system at first. But with that said, at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. After a couple days, you start to get a feel for it, and it does become easier to navigate. But just generally speaking, it does have a much less structured feel than other apps. Alright, so negative number 2 is that the company's speech recognition technology is pretty limited. So after each lesson, an optional exercise that you can do is recording yourself repeating words and phrases from the lesson, and from there, the company's tech replays your recording for you to hear it, as well as a clip from a fluent speaker so you can kind of compare and contrast your pronunciation. I think this is helpful to an extent, but its usefulness is pretty limited. There's no actual grade given on your pronunciation or detailed feedback given like you get with other apps, like with Rocket Spanish, Pimsleur, or Rosetta Stone. You're just kind of on your own to compare yourself against the clip of the native speaker, and for all you know, you might think you're doing a good job, but you're really not. You truly don't know at the end of the day. So bottom line, I just wish SpanishPod 101 took it a step further and offered actual software feedback. Alright, so last up here, while I am a big fan of the audio and video lessons, I do think they could be improved, mainly by incorporating more speaking practice that includes you as the listener. Honestly, the only chance you get to practice your own verbal skills is after the audio lesson, when you record yourself and compare it against fluent speakers. Instead, I kind of wish the audio lessons copied the format from Rocket Spanish or Pimsleur audio lessons, where the moderator makes it a point to include you as the listener in the conversation by prompting you to verbally answer questions or repeat phrases yourself. I think a little more conversational interaction like this would make the SpanishPod 101 lessons even better. But anyway, that about does it for this review. I hope it's been helpful. All in all, I didn't really know what to expect with SpanishPod 101. To be honest, I was sort of just expecting a bunch of audio recordings and that would be it. But overall, the program is definitely much more than that, and I was pretty impressed. Not only are the audio lessons super engaging and fun, but I also really like the other resources as well, like flashcards and lesson notes. And I especially like how the moderators of the lessons move slowly and thoughtfully to provide translations and breakdowns, and how they integrate grammar content into the conversations. Honestly, it's not a perfect program. I do think there could be some improvements made by adding speech software and cleaning up the organization of the materials a bit. But overall, I think SpanishPod 101 is a great tool for learning Spanish, especially if you're more of an auditory learner. But anyway, that's all I've got for you. I hope this review was helpful and you learned a little something. If so, make sure to return the favor by subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and dropping me a comment below. That would be really appreciated. And again, if you want to see that full detailed written review that I mentioned earlier in this video, just hop on over to our website, testprepinsight.com, or check out the other videos on our YouTube channel. We got a bunch of great content out there. But as always, thanks for watching, best of luck, and I'll see you in the next one.